So just to give you guys a little background, and if you're looking at methodologies, you may relate to some of what I'm saying. Although McAfee has an extensive portfolio, when we started looking at this, we were known as an AV company, and we needed to expand that and get people to understand what value a security platform would bring you. We had sales reps that were really great at renewing, but not necessarily focusing on winning net new logos. It became feature knife fights as opposed to solving the customer problems. And so we really wanted to align with the buyer's journey and their process versus just focusing on the sales process. We needed to improve our executive conversations because that's where the ultimate decision to go to a platform resided instead of best in breed. And we wanted to, we had great successful reps, but we didn't have a predictable, repeatable process. And so that was kind of the underlying situation and the opportunity that it afforded us. And Tim, if you'll go to the next slide. The other thing, as we began to research, we looked at Forrester and Gartner and, what are customers saying they wish salespeople were doing? And, they were tired of salespeople just talking about the feature benefits. They wanted salespeople to show that they understood their business, and those that crafted that buying vision won, even in a very competitive marketplace. And that was backed up by our own net promoter scores, and that, our customers wanted us to understand that, to show that we understood their business more. We interviewed our leaders. We got to about 95% of all sales leaders to find out what do our best reps do so that we could ensure, everybody typically has a top 5 to 10%, and then you've got that middle 60%. So we wanted to document what does that top percentage do and get that 60% to do it. And then when we looked at our own win-loss data, it was clear that when we engage high and have those executive conversations come in early in the process so that we can understand the problems and paint the buying vision and map our value to the customer's challenges, we win consistently. If you'll go ahead, Tim. And so we set out to build our own methodology. The bottom pre-qualified, qualified, solution defined, technical win, that will show you our sales process as it was reflected in Salesforce. And so we looked at a buying process or buyer's journey, and we started right now with just a standard, industry best practice for technology buys and aligned those two. And then in the middle is where we built our methodology. And the methodology is made up of skills, process, techniques, and tools. And we decided to build our own because what we found when you buy off the shelf is that it may hit one of these stages and be famous for having a technique or something within one of these stages, but there was none that addressed what a rep should do in all of the stages. And this is the opportunity management piece, and then we knew we needed to incorporate account planning and territory planning. If you'll go ahead, Tim. We knew this was going to be a lot of change, and so we started out and we engaged Revigi very early in the process, and it's one of the things I appreciate about them as a partnership is that we thought we had mapped out something really large and narrowed it down to biteable chunks, and we went round and round with Tim specifically and he thought we were doing too much. We didn't care. We needed to do what we were doing. And the further we got in the process, the more we acknowledged they were right, and the more narrow our scope became on on what we would measure and reinforce. We felt like we couldn't launch only a piece of the process. We needed to show them the whole story from beginning to end, but we narrowed the scope on what we would measure and what we would really drill down on for a period of time. And that was more in the opportunity planning piece, because the things we picked were the top things that the sales leaders said that our reps needed to be better at to have a direct positive impact on their business. So we felt that would be harder for them to argue with, and therefore we could get more adoption and wins faster. But what we knew, having been at companies when I was in sales and had a methodology shoved down my throat, or having done it here on a couple of occasions, everybody has the best intentions of, yeah, that's great, I need to do that. But then reality hits when they get back into their daily routine and they forget. And so that's where the Revigy tool set came in, and finding ways where we could use the tools to reinforce and remind them of what they'd learned and what they agreed would help have a positive impact on their business. And one of our keys was, let's keep it simple, right? We don't want to add an hour's worth of time for every tool that we pick for sales to use. And the Revigy tools helped us do that. And then we continually drive home the value these bring to the sales reps and the sales leaders. Go ahead, Tim.
Sure.
Now, clearly we had challenges, and there were some things that, we learned after the fact worked really well for us. I'd like to say we did all those things that worked well because we knew they would work well, but we were kind of just lucky in some of those. We had good executive sponsorship. The truth is the sales leadership asked us to build they asked to implement a methodology. We sold them on building our own. Because Sales Enablement is part of Sales Ops and they own change management and Salesforce, we were all in the same family, and then we brought in IT, and having us all together working on a team proved to be very beneficial in the initial rollout, but then also in the mitigating any challenges that we ran into. And we did run into some. We had the sales leaders and reps engaged early, so any tool that we rolled out, a sales representative had participating in scoping out what that was going to look like. I mentioned that we engaged Revigy. Initially we engaged them truthfully just to validate what we'd already done. So I don't know about y'all's companies, but at ours, if somebody that we paid a lot of money to outside of the company says it's good, then the people inside the company believe it. And the side benefit of that was we learned a great deal in the consulting time on how to communicate what it was we were going to do, what some best practices were just from rolling out a methodology. And as I mentioned early, they really helped keep us focused on not doing too much at one time. Another key thing was doing it in a phased approach and making sure that we weren't sending out more than the sales reps could bite off, and then gaining frontline accountability. From a challenge perspective, we had only had Salesforce implemented for a year, and so the usage was not high, and we were going out trying to get them to use these tools, and it became obvious the only reason they were going into Salesforce was to use these tools, and that was not a compelling enough reason. So we had to kind of back up and increase Salesforce usage in general. At the time we started this, we were Intel, and we used Intel's IT, Intel's finance, Intel's HR. all their supporting functions. And so in the middle of our rollout, we spun out and became McAfee again and had to build up all those functions. So it was a lot of change happening at the same time, which, as you can imagine, created competing priorities. And then as we began to do, a core piece of our methodology is Challenger. And we knew we had relationship salespeople, but it wasn't until we were standing in classes trying to get them to embrace the whiteboard and some of the things that we were proposing that it became very apparent what a barrier those relationship salespeople were going to be to adoption. And we still struggle with sales and marketing alignment and getting the messaging to match the methodology and the way we are teaching salespeople now to have conversations. But we drilled down on the value map, the influencer map, and the qualification scorecard, although we did roll out all the components of an opportunity plan. And that has been instrumental in our adoption. Within 3 months, we got to about 50%, and within 9 months, we were at 70%, 60 to 70%, and we seem to be stuck there. A big contributor was, one, we had what we called scrum calls with managers, where after they came to class, we would bring them on, and there was 3 or 4 questions we would ask them that made them uncomfortable if they weren't adopting it, and helped us learn what we could change. And then we ran dashboards on the tool usage and went to executive calls, and it was just the executive was either red, green, or yellow. And over time, they didn't like being red, and that really pushed the adoption.
Yep.
So, that's a quick 12 minutes worth of overview of probably a 12-month process, but that's kind of what's been going on with us over the last 12 months.